The difference with him is that he humbled himself. You know, he didn't exalt himself above others as the Pharisees did. So, and that's more pleasing in God's sight when we humble ourselves instead of, you know, putting other people down. Just humble your own self. Humble yourself.
Okay. All right.
His words were few. His words were few.
His words were few. So you're saying he said a whole lot with a few words. Oh, okay. All right.
Basically, when we go before God, we should go before him as a sinner, not like we've done him a favor by coming to church in tithing or fasting. We haven't done God any favors. We did it ourselves. So when we go before God, we should go before him knowing we're sinners and pretty much say that the first thing because we have sinned.
So again, going back to the prayer of Jesus, he is acknowledging, so sort of like the sister said about few words, his unwillingness to lift up his eyes to heaven is acknowledging God's position in his life. And he, so sort of like, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be. That's what he's doing. So it's sort of also an indication we don't have to say those words to mean those words or to be making that part of our prayer.
Okay, good. They got a lot of hands, brothers.
Am I next?
Oops, sorry.
You sure?
And it puts you in the mind of tax gatherer as someone who wasn't taught about the word, who may have, fell away from the word and was really being brutally honest that they're a sinner. But they didn't have no guidance or rules to be a tax collector. They did it by any means necessary. So they knew who they were. They were brutes. They were, hurt people. They would do what they need to do to get the job done. That was a job. So they could understand. They had almost like they had a fear of God or respect for God. Compared to the Pharisees, they thought they were God. So it's like when we have people who are lost, and I've had somebody say, I know I'm a heathen, but I know there's some church people that are heathen, but they don't know that they're heathens. So, it's walking the walk and talking the talk. They knew they were who they were, and they kept it real.
Okay, all right. So I saw a bunch of hands, so I need for you to raise your hand so the guys with the microphones can see you, because I'm seeing them walk past some of you because your hands are so low. So raise them high to make sure you get their attention.
Also, at the same time, he stood afar from being in the forefront like the Pharisees did, whereas nobody could really see him when he did this. He was standing away from people.
Okay.
What really strikes me every time I read this scripture is the attitude of the tax collector. There's a little thing in this verse that when we read it, it says, he says, be merciful to me, actually is the sinner. So he does not consider anybody else. He's not saying that, I'm one of many, but he sees himself as a person who has sinned against God, not himself and other people. And so it's very personal for him. And this is the kind of thing that Jesus says he rewards that kind of prayer. And that's it.
All right, good.
For me, the words that particularly stick out are the "oh God." Just saying that "oh," like it invokes the emotion, and like through Psalms, that "oh Lord" is used a lot, like when you're crying out to Him, and it shows that it's coming from the heart. That spiritual piece is there. That He has this dependency or this need, just in how He opened up to express his prayer, and that's profound, because sometimes you don't have the words, they're few, but that emotion that you could just say, oh Lord, have mercy on me, is so deep because he understands what you're going through in your heart.
Okay.
Yeah, I was reading this and I was just thinking that you know, God pays attention to a man's heart. And it seemed like in the world is all caught up in your status, you know, the money you make and everything, and how other people view you and everything. But I think for God's people, we got to be willing to get on our knees, and we got to be willing to humble ourselves in such a way where God can see our heart, and that should be the main focus. I think the world really trains us since childhood to really go after, you know, status and how people view you, rather than we should be concerned about how God's dealing with us.
Okay.
Okay, so for the tax collector, he went to God. He was humble. He realized he had a broken heart, and God is the only person that could help him. But with the Pharisees, it was all about pride and where I'm at and where I'm going. So with the tax collector, was a humble person, and he needs help, and he knew that the only help he could get was from God.
Okay. All right.
He recognized that he was a sinner.
Okay. So two very, oh, go ahead.
Really, actually, mostly everyone said it, is you get to a point when you know you're helpless. So you can ask just, God, Lord, please have mercy on me, a sinner. And that's all, sometimes that's all you can say.
Okay. So in here, we see two very different prayers, and it's not difficult to understand whose prayer was going to get through. And I say that because we sometimes, we don't recognize that an inappropriate prayer is not going nowhere. You said the words, but it's not going anywhere. And so we really need to recognize in our prayers and our talking to God, it needs to follow God's pattern. And one of the things that we do in prayer is that we show God that we need him. You not go to God in prayer as if you are all in all and you don't need no help, and I'm just reporting on what I did this week. What you did this week, you were able to do it because God blessed you to do it or empowered you to do it, but you didn't do it on your own. And again, so you see two very different prayers, and that's why in verse number 14, I tell you, this man, the tax collector, went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Be careful of putting yourself up on pedestals.
The other thing that stood out to me is that in verse 13, where the tax collector understood the need for God to intervene on his behalf.